Welcome to the meeting room. I'm James Lancaster.
And I'm Holly Patrick.
Today we're talking man versus machine. Well, actually, we're talking about AI and its impact on the events industry. And we have two people here who have a lot to say on the matter. Tommy Moore, Senior Creative Director at DRPG, and Ed Poland, co-founder of HireSpace. But before that, a short video from our sponsor.
At IHG Hotels and Resorts, we're in the business of you.
We're here to help you plug in,
connect and recharge,
make an impression,
and meet with confidence.
With 19 brands built for business,
your business gets even more rewarding.
With an award-winning loyalty program at 6,000 IHG hotels and resorts worldwide.
So I guess from an events perspective, there are various ways you can use AI. There's the event planning process itself. There's the impact on delegate experience, networking, engagement, all that kind of stuff. There's marketing. And then there's the stuff that we all do in our offices, all the personal admin-y type stuff. But just to kick off, I think I'd like to get a sense from both of you, just where we are in terms of AI and the events industry. It's been hyped a great deal. Is it living up to the hype? Where do you see the extent of how far this can change the industry, and where are we right now? So maybe Tommy, if you can kickstart, hype versus reality, where are we?
I think that I'm a big skeptic of how much people talk about things on LinkedIn and how much they actually use it and do it. So there's a lot of newly founded, newly minted AI experts all the way across the events industry that are really doing muggle work. They're using a little bit of generative, a little bit of Copilot, a little bit of this, and talking it up as if it's a very revolutionary thing. I think there are some very interesting aspects of AI being used, but I think we're in very, very early days. And I'm very fortunate to be in a creative comms agency. So AI as an experience tool, things like digital twinning, smart invites, replication, we can do some very cool, sexy, interesting things with it. But I'd say industry-wide, I think the bar is relatively low and people are running before they can walk. They're not necessarily right now getting the foundational skills of computational thinking and working computationally. They're just jumping straight to generative and what I can play with and work with. So I'd say very early primordial soup level steps for most people in the industry, but they probably don't know it. You don't know what you don't know. So I think many people feel they may be innovating with AI, but some of the toys and interesting tools and tactics we can get our hands on, they're awesome, but they're not well known or well used or well loved as much as they could be, but they will.
Yeah, I would echo what Tommy said. I mean, it is early days. I mean, let's not forget that AI has been around for decades, but I think it's in the last kind of 18 months to 2 years where, particularly with generative AI that you mentioned, Tommy, and, ChatGPT is the obvious one that everyone's kind of been playing with recently. This is why the discourse in the events industry is accelerating so quickly on AI, because it has suddenly become much more kind of practically applicable to people who aren't necessarily technologists or experts in it. We are at the beginning. One of your questions, James, was, what is the extent to which this is going to change the event sector? And I think I think it will change it considerably. I think the way in which people, plan events will change pretty fundamentally, even in the next kind of 12 to 18 months. I think the scope of what you can achieve at an event is already changing very quickly, and we're seeing amazing examples of events using new technology. And then finally, the way that you understand your audience at an event and can use that to then create new, bigger, better events and play into other marketing channels. So early days, but we seem to be accelerating, and the potential is big.
It sounds like there's still a lot to learn, and we're using it at a very superficial level at the moment. I know a lot of event planners are using it to help with marketing materials, for example. But if you're using tools like ChatGPT and putting in a simple command that thousands of other marketers could be doing, how do you make sure that marketing material sounds specific to your audience?
And the main thing is, if you are relying, I always warn people, so I do a lot of training for organisations, and I warn them, never do your thinking in the AI box. Most people will open up their ChatGPT or their input of choice, and they'll start splurging their mind waffle into the ChatGPT box. And I always say, no, old school. Put it in Word, put your thinking in order, map out know, think, feel, do. Is it a behavioural change I want from you? Is it an educational change? Is it a perception change? If you do your thinking out loud using AI, I think you're going to end up with rubbish results very often. I always advise people go old school to get your thoughts and your audiences in order, and then feed in, junk in, junk out. If you feed in junk prompts, you'll get junk material. And there's something called, sunk cost. So you think if you've put hours into using ChatGPT, that your end output might be of value because you're saying, well, I've put hours into this. It can still be quite bad, and I see a lot of badly made content, be that imagery, be that film, be that AI generated audio. There's so much that can generate right now. So really, I think there is a risk you replicate. I think there are certain hacks and works around. If you want to use AI to be inspired, so show me the most opened event invitations. Show me the top trending themes. Now you'll get Google's biases. If you search it socially or search it via a search engine, you'll get biases and paid for ads. If you use AI, you might get sometimes a slightly less biased or at least a different second opinion. And that could inform your choices. So are you using it to do the research, or are you doing it to make the product? I think it's very good for the research phases, but the end product is nearly always superior with someone that knows how to artwork, knows how to write, knows how to design. So I always advise organizations, why are you cheating yourself of a skilled paid professional to have a bit of a bodge yourself? Have the go yourself, but use that as the thing to brief the person that knows what they're doing and doing this for a living. I speak to a lot of people that are in-house events people or in-house organizations, and they'll talk about how much they use it. But for them, they might do 3 events, 4, 5 events a year. For a creative director like me, that's a week. And I only use it 10%, 15% of my time in a holistic mix of other tools. So I think it's really important to make sure you know where it fits, that you have the right training, and if you put in junk prompts, you will end up with the same lazy outputs as other people. And often they're erroneous, filled with bias, huge amount of bias. Even now, underneath ChatGPT, right, the first caveat is it's not always right. It's like ChatGPT will often check before you do it. So I think it's very much still on the human, and you should always have last human eyes on, and you should look at it and be discerning, just as you would if an agency made it. So I think shortcutting research, very useful. Using it to make the actual output, I think that has diminishing returns unless you've had very good training or experience about searching and writing computationally.
I think there will be some repetition, but I think the difference is a good marketer has thought about what they want to say before they use ChatGPT. A bad marketer will go into ChatGPT for their first bit of inspiration, or even worse, they'll go in and they'll copy paste straight into an email or whatever it is. But you're very quickly going to see the difference between good marketing and bad marketing. A good marketer has already thought about what they want to say before they use a tool like that. Then they might borrow some of the structure, or they might borrow some of the ideas, but really they know kind of what they want to say initially. And it goes back to the thing about personalization as well, because a good marketer is going to really, really understand their audience already, and that's going to be very specific to the content that they're going to create, and their ability as a marketer to understand their audience and therefore to personalize their communications and their events and their marketing is significantly increased by AI, which I'm sure we'll get on to talk about. But I think you hit the nail on the head. It's knowing what you want to say before you use the tool, and then using it to help you.
But also training, Tommy, you hit on training. Are people being trained in AI?
You should, and we do as an organization. But I would say that most people have gone absolutely rogue because it's so intuitive and accessible. I would say it's just because you can doesn't mean you should. It's a simple interface. It looks to most people, it's just like Google and it gives me some clever things. But it's not. It's nothing like Google. And I think it's deceptive in how easy it is to generate. And people aren't trained in the legalities, the ethics, the morality, let alone the efficacy. You need to know if you're legal. You need to know is this kosher not only in the UK, but there are different geographical laws where you might be publishing this. We work on lots of big international events, and what might be legal in the UK might not be legal in Italy, might not be legal in Japan. Knowing all of these things, it's a dangerous tool. I think most people behind the wheel of AI is like a toddler driving a car in central London. Get the training, but before you give it a go.
Who's going to give the training though? Are there enough consultants out there?
Loads. I mean, you've got to be a very discerning shopper, because suddenly, remember when everyone talked about the metaverse, and then everyone's thought leadership, and everyone was storytelling. There's these new words that people pretend to be an expert in every couple of months, and this kind of quarter's flavour is AI. So you really need to look at, do you talk about it for a living, or do you do it for a living? And I think this is where you can be people have very good talks, and a lot of people made very good books, but they don't do it as their job. So I would say speak to professionals and agencies and companies that do it as their 9 to 5. They use the AI wisely and prudently as their business, not just a thing they talk about. But I would say if you had if you had £1 to spend on AI, spend 99p right now and get clued up and trained.
What about some of these legal ramifications then? I'm thinking, I remember Mobile World Congress not too long ago were fined. It was for biometrics, facial recognition getting into the show. I think it was an AI biometrics, but still it's technology. This is around data protection. They failed to do due diligence, so they got caught out. They got quite a low fine relative to the size of MWC. They got €200,000. So what are the kind of big obvious traps that people should avoid when it comes to the legalities of using generative AI?
The first is to have a bit of an onion model, in that I've worked for some huge, very well-known organisations that still do not have a fit-for-purpose AI policy, procedure, standards. So if we talk about things, let's boil it down very simply. So if I'm in an organisation and I want to digitally twin my CEO, and I want to render really cool personalized AI videos saying, hey John, great to see you at insert last thing, be great to see you at insert new thing, cool, trendy, 45-second personalized AI generated video. Most organizations, we'll show them something like that. They go, that's wicked, we want some of that. But they've got no set up policy or procedure for, does that CEO sign off the notion of what they're going to say? Do they sign off every instance? Because I'm working on some of these and I'm making 40,000 bespoke AI videos on behalf of a CEO. That's a lot of rent. The CEO is not going to sign that off. So having a way that policies, procedures in-house, you need your own shipping order first, and then you need to have the right professional legal guidance. Don't take legal guidance from a creative director or a marketer. Take legal guidance from a lawyer. And I think that's the main thing. People are dabbling and they look at different policies and procedures. There's some good websites. There's good websites on originality.ai and other bits and pieces, but have your own in-house policies, procedures that people are trained on and are aware of. Understand that will constantly evolve because AI is evolving apace. And then build onto that onion model. What's it like in the UK? What's it like in Europe? What's it like in all the territories you operate in? Because there are many legal ramifications. Ethical facial analysis versus generative AI versus things like audio creation. Like, how many people in an organization really know if your AI soundtrack matches the beats per minute and style structure of an existing pop tune? I would say that, Brenda, the events manager, is probably not best placed to say that AI soundtrack I generated is entirely different or legally distinct from that Mambo number 5. They're not in that place to know it. So there's a lot of training, awareness, but get your own house in order first, get the right advice to do it, and build outwards.
Yeah, it feels like the early days of the internet, doesn't it, Ed? A bit Wild West at the moment.
Yeah, I echo it. So I think it's as you say, it's taking precautions, it's common sense. It's have a good data, have a good data policy. You're dealing with people's data often when it comes to AI. So if you're for instance, if you're going to take all of your event attendees and you're going to run them through an AI to analyze their event feedback, for instance, then make sure that you've got consent from the attendees before you do that. Or very often, actually, you can you can kind of switch off the functionality that shares that data on third-party tools. But generally, the idea is have a robust data protection policy. You've probably got this already. Make sure you're getting consent. Make sure they know how to opt out. Make sure if you're dealing with any third parties that they've got a robust data protection policy. Make sure you've got the right kind of team training in place. I think if you do all these things that generally we do anyway, you shouldn't go too far wrong.
When you break it down like that, it actually sounds like that these generative AI platforms, ChatGPT, aren't that easy to use. They're easy to log in and ask your questions, but when you really break it down, it's kind of so many different considerations. Where are we? Let's talk in the UK. Where are we with regulation around AI, and what are some of the other pitfalls that you can fall into? And do you think there's a kind of a sentiment of just, well, everyone's doing it, so if I get in trouble, that means everyone else is going to get in trouble as well?
There's lots of legislation that's happening with AI with a capital A. I would say there's lots of big industrial uses of AI that probably the listeners and watchers of this podcast won't really be that interested in. But there's kind of the very large, complex AI that, say, a huge insurance broker may use, or other organizations. I think for most events people and communicators, they'll be looking at administrative AI, which is about data housekeeping, generative AI for in terms of marketing, engagement, kind of show content and so on. So their usages, the people engaging with this, are probably always going to be of a lower level, and there's much less kind of legal ramification there right now, less legal kind of, the Eye of Sauron is not looking at that right now compared to some of the bigger, more data heavy. But to your point, AI is nothing without the right data lakes. AI sends its crawlers into the data. How you store, what kind of data you're searching, the data is the important bit. The generation, the AI bit, the human interface, that's low-level stuff. The quality and legality and ethics of the data you're storing and using and capturing, that's the big deal.
Do you think AI will change the nature of meetings and events themselves? So we used an amazing bit of kit when we did the meeting show in Singapore called Snap Insight, Give Me, and it was basically it was a real-time audio transcription of what was being said on stage, and it kind of immediately gave you a white paper. It had sort of word clouds at the end, and people could zap a QR code and get it all delivered to their email address. Now, to me, that seemed like a really good thing, because it meant that people weren't taking notes. It meant that they could listen and engage and be present in the moment. So that struck me as a very positive thing. But I've also heard about this facial recognition thing where people are judging the emotions of delegates in the room to see how much they're enjoying the session, which sounds like a speaker's nightmare, because, half the time people are just looking down at their phones anyway, which struck me as a little bit intrusive. And I felt, I haven't signed off on that. I'm not sure I want a camera on my face. But in what ways do you think AI will actually change what a meeting feels like and looks like?
Well, I think it will change quite quickly, and there is plenty of this type of technology that you talk about that is analysing people in real time at an event and is allowing the organiser to make real time in-event decisions on all sorts of things. And I would kind of look at the positives here of that. Technology like that, take for instance what that can do for accessibility, for instance. So you might have a visually impaired person who can better attend an event because there is AI that is analysing the movement of people and crowds at that event, so that visually impaired person can take an easier route. You can have AI that can provide audio guidance through the event to that person by looking at where everything is and what's the best way to get there, real time, in person, or in moment guidance. So yes, I think that there is some of that, and there's lots of technology like that being used at events even now, looking at sentiment analysis and. I think there are plenty of ways that will manifest that will be brilliant for events.
There's lots of mislabeling of what AI is. Right now, if you introduce any new technology, you make a new kettle, put it on the market, people will say, it's a piece of AI. I think what people tend to use the big AI brush for anything that's new and technology orientated. So you take things like ethical facial recognition, which is something I use and I put on lots of events. Now, this is one of the only ways you're going to get real ROI. I personally lie in every survey I've ever filled out. You put me in a focus group, I will not confront you with how terrible your event is. I will say the quiche was lovely, crack on. Because humans are humans. Yep. And surveys, focus groups, often nonsense. But if I can tell you that at 7 minutes in, you showed that video and you lost every woman in the audience between ages 28 and 35, and likely for these reasons, and then you got them back at 17 minutes 22 later, because of these reasons, that's got power, because I'm getting a good version of the truth. I'm getting unbiased. Now, it's only as good as the software, but the software is very good. But not a huge amount of that is AI. There's great technology. There's brilliant mechanics in there. But, the AI, nothing is generated. The only way you could say you're using AI is in the interpretation, because the analysis never records you. You could never watch a film back of you. It's just ones and zeros to say that demographic A, engaged here, disengaged here, hotspot in the room over here. So in terms of an ROI tool, it's phenomenal. You are not obliged, at least in Europe, from GDPR rules, you're not obliged to let people know they're doing ethical facial analysis. 2 distinctions here. Facial recognition needs to recognize. It needs to link Tommy Joe Moore with Tommy Joe Moore's face. That's recognition. That comes with lots of legalities. Ethical facial analysis, male of this age, on this stand, in this place, of, what it assumes of me. Ethical facial analysis is exempt from those things. You need to know the technologies that you're working with, but it's a very powerful tool, because it's one of the only ways, in my opinion, I can give you honest ROI feedback. Now, whether that's real time or post-event to make it cumulatively better, it's one of the very few ways. You would still do your focus groups and your workshops and you do all the other stuff, but I can go to a CEO and say, you lost them there, or you lost these people there, or you won them there. Let's do more of that.
I think we should also talk about what AI is going to do to the classic role of an event planner, an event marketer, anybody that works in the event space. I hate to say the word redundancy and redundant, but surely there's a part of a classic role that AI is going to make it redundant. Should event professionals be using AI to free up their time to do more, I want to say, valuable tasks? Or could those AI platforms still do those more valuable tasks? Where does it leave us? How should we be using it?
Yeah, good question. I think when I think for every time there's been any kind of industrial revolution, there's always been a kind of fear that people will lose their jobs. Generally, that hasn't happened, and I think particularly with events, I think it will go the other way. And the reason I think that is because, we all know that events are the best form of engagement. It's pretty much indisputable. I know from a HireSpace point of view, we're a digital first company, but if we can meet our clients face to face, we're always going to take the opportunity to do that because it is so powerful. The issue with events is that they have been quite difficult and quite expensive to organize, and that's where I think AI is going to come in and make them much easier to organize and much more impactful, and therefore I think there's going to be much more of them. So I think there will be more jobs for event professionals. I think the role will evolve, but if you're a typical event professional, a resourceful, creative problem solver who's great with people, then you are going to thrive in this environment because there's just going to be more opportunity. Picture a kind of, a head of sales at a company who goes to his or her budget holder and says, I want to do an event for 200 of our clients, and we're going to get them all there, and we're going to meet them and shake their hands and engage with them, and it's going to be brilliant. And that budget holder's thinking, this does sound great, and I know that's great, but I also know that that's going to be 6 weeks of your time to organize that, and you're not going to be kind of doing, you're not going to be doing anything else. And now I think that that head of sales has the ability to go, no, actually, with the tools at our disposal now, this is going to take me 2 weeks, and for the other 4 weeks, I'm going to be doing other beneficial activities. And suddenly that decision maker is saying, oh, okay, that makes sense. Let's do that event that we might not have done previously, or maybe even we try and do 2 events in that time. And I think because of these efficiencies that AI can drive, we are just going to see a golden age of events, really, and we're going to see more and more of them. And so I think the opportunity for event professionals is huge, maybe bigger than it's ever been.
So you're using it as an extra colleague almost, someone else to pick up the slack.
Exactly. I mean, tell me an event professional that isn't too busy. Every event professional is too busy and overworked. And what AI can do is free them up by taking away the kind of administrative, manual, repeated information bits to give them more time to focus on the real value-add parts of their role.
I mean, there's a very famous quote in saying that you might not lose your job to AI, but you might lose it to someone that's better at AI than you. And I would say that is very true, in that it's just a skill you need to have. You couldn't enter a modern workplace now and not know how to use a computer. You could be the best copywriter, you could be David Ogilvy, and you could come to an advertising agency now not knowing how to use a computer and you wouldn't get a job. It's a fundamental skill set that will only exacerbate over time. I think the main thing is having pots of AI activation. So AI for ROI analysis. How can I prove the event was worth doing? There are tools that are great for that. There is AI usage for event planning and seamless planning and research and administration, and there are tools for that. There's AI tools for content generation and engaging kind of experiential activation. So it's about being a bit like Batman, and on Batman's belt is the useful everyday tools. But Batman also has a cave full of things he uses infrequently. I think a good events professional has a bat belt full of tools they know and love and use every day and get better at using. And they should also have a pretty well-stocked back cave full of things that I might use infrequently, like the facial recognition software. I'm not going to use it every day, but that's in my ROI pot. If I need to evidence to a big firm that this is actually changing sentiment, brand love, engagement, that's one of many that I could deploy. So I think knowing it's not about the individual tools. The tools change too fast. But having pots, content, admin, experience, and you fill that with tools that you're allowed to use, that you know how to use, that become familiar to you. So I don't think very few people will lose their jobs because there's not much that it can do better than, it augments human decision making, and a human being nearly always decides. AI advises. It's a bit like being an advisor to a king. The king still decides, the human still decides. AI can give you the best case, it can give you some really good data, it can inform you, but the squid, is the best software on the planet is the one between your ears, and that person makes the decision.
You can train an AI very well to do one task extremely well, but what an AI can't do so well, which an event planner can do extremely well, is juggle multiple things at once and bring them all together and work out how it all fits together and create an incredible outcome. An AI can't do that.
Well, this will come as a huge relief to event profs the world over. We're running out of time, guys. Thanks very much for your input today. I wonder if we could just finish, and this is putting you on the spot a little bit. Is there one piece of generative AI that perhaps you've heard of, but you think maybe a lot of people haven't heard of, or a bit of kit that you really like and use in your day-to-day lives that you would give a shout out to?
I am almost incapable of putting good-looking presentations together. I can usually order my thoughts okay, but making it look good and making it look pretty, I could do it for the rest of my life. I still wouldn't create one that looked good until until recently, when I've used tools like Beautiful AI and Visme and various other ones. For me, that's a lifesaver. AI generally is very, very good at collating information and standardizing information and making it look good in a few clicks.
And I would say get very good or get engaged with Firefly from the Adobe Suite. Because in reality, if you're an event person or a marketer or someone involved in communications, you will generate something. It is hugely unlikely that will be the thing that goes on LinkedIn or in the email. Even if it's good, it's not going to be perfect. And it will eventually likely have to go to a designer. So knowing how to build a relationship between what I generate and what goes to a designer is really helpful. And with Firefly, which pretty much every designer that's using Photoshop in design will know how to use, you can really start to be very creative. From that, if I generate that image, can I now see that from above? Can I see that in so many more formats than what, say, an average Midjourney user can use? What you can do on Midjourney is this level. If you give that to a designer that's got Firefly, it gets to this level. So having a good relationship with designers and knowing how they might use the thing you've generated is really important. But it's a great bit of software. People that you've got that have access to Photoshop will already have some ability to use it and turn it into layers. And that means your presentations, your shows, your ads, your screens, all your stuff can be elevated. So I'd say get involved in that and become a good computational thinker. Know how to search and prompt. The science is important. It doesn't take a million years, but that's the fundamental nugget. Understand AI in theory and understand how to search computationally, and you can't go too far wrong.
Tommy, Ed, thank you for your time. For now, that's all from me.
And that's all from me.
At IHG Hotels and Resorts, we're in the business of you.
We're here to help you plug in.
Connect and recharge.
Make an impression. And meet with confidence.
With 19 brands built for business,
Your business gets even more rewarding.
With an award-winning loyalty program at 6,000 IHG hotels and resorts worldwide.